Welcome to Checkpoint CloudGuard's Cloud Intelligence Threat and Hunting, formerly known as Logic. Like our CloudGuard posture management training, this will assume some cloud accounts have been added, along with user accounts created. And I mentioned CloudGuard posture management because it is a building block to cloud intelligence. If you've configured a standard rule set, cloned a rule set, scheduled the rule set, then reviewed the results in the events console, the path to cloud intelligence will be shorter. Threat intelligence, though, allows you to visualize and analyze network traffic into and out of your environment. With this, you can identify traffic from unwanted sources, gaps in network security settings, which can then fix other features in the CloudGuard native console. It analyzes those network flow logs to visualize that activity in your cloud network. And like our posture management, we can use similar GSL queries to show your traffic of interest that can be built upon common queries or your own queries. And that's all done through that GSL language that you may be familiar with in posture management. With the newer, improved intelligence menu now, we have a central set of shortcuts that will allow you to be able to quickly move and examine the areas of concern, whether it is the dashboard where we get started, that is the first screen that we log in and see and that we can customize, to the events, as well as a traffic explorer, both in a log, smart log form, and in a visual clarity like form that you may become familiar with in the network security portion, as well as being able to configure policies, again, like you did in posture management, modify as in manage those rule sets, and as well as configure those notifications. Notifications have been moved in our settings tab. So again, being able to go back to this intelligence central menu location will be helpful. So like our onboarding process, when you originally onboarded AWS accounts, and that's what we will feature on this time, the process is started in our assets menu. That is through an existing AWS account, you have that ability to add flow logs and CloudTrail logs or events. That term sometimes is interchangeable, logs and events, with respect to CloudTrail data. The onboarding process does look a bit like the onboarding process when you onboarded AWS accounts. There are some other options. Instead of standard onboarding, you can do custom onboarding as well. I urge you to keep it simple initially. Start with a single cloud account as getting started. At some point, you can onboard multiple accounts, and a custom onboarding process notes this as multiple cloud accounts. The standard onboarding one we'll take a quick look at. Notes some important prerequisites that we should represent here and is listed here, and knows that the appropriate permissions are needed, and the flow logs record format is set to AWS default format. That's an important feature, a check, if you will. The wizard, like our AWS onboarding, gives you those pop-ups that guide you through this process of creating an S3 bucket. Scrolling down, not easily found sometimes, walks you through that process, gives you these areas and where you find this in the AWS console. As of today, yes, the AWS console does get modified from time to time in terms of look and feel, but this is the latest update with respect to that. And using ultimately a policy document, much like you used for onboarding your AWS account. We're using that same process, and then you append it to your permissions, your policy, as you did for the onboarding called Dome Connect. Again, when you originally onboarded an AWS account. So you're sort of combining that in a way. The other method is to onboard your CloudTrail logs or events. Under environments, as we mentioned, selecting that AWS account, adding that CloudTrail log, as we'll note it here in the instructions, is similar to those VPC flow log additions, those adds. That gives you this interactive wizard that shows you where this is listed within the AWS console. Scrolling down, mentions the CloudTrail log, and then using the policy document that we talked about before will allow you to onboard those VPC flow logs and those CloudTrail events in just a short while. And then you'll be able to examine them in a variety of different ways, both visually using a Clarity-like tool that you saw and probably use in network security, as well as use those posture management themes with respect to policies, rule sets, and those notifications that we quickly looked at. So again, I want to mention that you have that ability to use the same process in posture management and apply that with the CloudGuard native tool set that includes that threat intelligence piece that Checkpoint has employed in this solution. So certainly keep that in mind. Specifically, again, you can run a rule set in posture management. You can clone that rule set. You can modify that rule set. Well, in intelligence, you can onboard those VPC CloudTrail logs. You can select an existing rule set. You can make a new rule set, and just like posture management, review those events and investigate. So that is, again, the same kind of process that you can work with, contribute in this process of onboarding and then examining it. Now, the last thing I will mention before we begin to drill down on that new improved events console is something that we mention when we're onboarding, educating our new CloudGuard intelligence users, is that we use this Checkpoint Threat Cloud. It is a dynamically updated service that is based on global network threat sensors, organizational data, and share that threat data intelligence that we build upon, that we enrich these VPC flow logs to allow you to see what is going on rather than just looking at a simple log file and trying to decipher if it is legitimate traffic or not. So back at this intelligence menu selection set, it defaults you back into that dashboard. Again, the first screen that you see when you log in, but now you can, as we'll see towards the end, you have that ability to specifically create widgets with regards to your threat intelligence findings and be able to modify that in a variety of different ways. You want to emphasize intelligence settings, as I'm doing here, and be able to look at those events, assets, traffic, as well as trending graphs, and as always being able to add a widget to that information and share that information, right? You can always share that dashboard with the findings that you create with respect to the intelligence addition. So we see now that it has a similar path, a similar theme, if you will, relative to onboarding, the dashboard, and now the security events. That is something that you're familiar with in posture findings. Now we can see under threat and security events specific results from these now ingested VPC flow logs and CloudTrail events with respect to this newer solution, i.e. intelligence. And you can further filter, as you have in posture findings, relative to production accounts, specifically to a entity type that you may need to look at in more detail. And more importantly now, a slight change from looking at posture management. We really want to look at it under a specific time frame as well, and then being able to drill down on a specific event and be able to understand it, be able to make a recommendation and investigate it through a variety of ways. So this will populate again in some time and give you something that looks very similar to posture management, but it came from policies, rule sets, and that notification process. And it is under this same events console that it was generated. Starting with cloud network traffic, think of that as VPC flow log traffic. That is, it is looking at that VPC flow log, something that someone who has worked on firewalls over a period of years, you see as we'll scroll up here a little bit here, we see a source port, a destination port, the bytes, and whether or not it has been accepted per your AWS policy. But as mentioned, it uses simple queries like you have used in posture findings, specifically that GSL, governance and specification language, that allows you to quickly understand the syntax and be able to add to that syntax either manually or automatically or automagically, as you might expect, as you see in this particular set of VPC flow logs that have been enriched with the threat cloud data from Checkpoint. But if I hover my mouse here, I have the ability to build upon or remove. Yes, I'm modifying that in real time. Interested in a specific source, interested in a particular destination. You see how I'm building that GSL query very quickly? And I can even look at whether this traffic is malicious. And how are we determining that? Through that Checkpoint Threat Cloud service, which is above and beyond anything that is offered in the native VPC flow logs within the AWS console. This is not malicious. I've been quite detailed here. I can back it off, but nevertheless, I might be concerned with that particular type of traffic. I can look at it over a time period, a custom time period. You may have seen that before as well. Here's something that's very um, detailed. Now, we've gotten started with this action, if you will, and looked it over a particular time frame. But this is just literally scratching the surface in terms of the details that we can create and the things that we can look for with respect to that VPC flow log. And I call your attention to this query selection set here that allows you to look at and build and educate yourself on a variety of different queries. And yes, we do use that MITRE ATT&CK. We'll look at that as a framework that is developed by the MITRE Corporation. We have taken it relative to the AWS cloud and Azure cloud and incorporated a set of rule sets that are logical and makes sense. You can also build a custom query that, as you can see in this busy environment, has created a lot of interesting ones relative to malicious traffic. And again, I can build from that. And yes, like the GSL um, process, you'll make some mistakes. Maybe the query won't make sense, but you can certainly run that and you can build it through a GSL builder like interface as well. So very quickly, I've looked at some standard queries. I've looked at some, that's the standard queries, some custom queries based on this ingested VPC flow traffic, and can begin to drill down on this. Now, as always, this is a common theme throughout CloudGuard native. You have the ability to call your attention to the lower right here. You can always export that. I call that a simple record, a simple sanity check of what you are seeing over a course of a particular time period and an account. But as we saw before, we can drill down on that, scroll up a little bit, and look at this in even a more detailed manner using this real-time process that we've already accepted it. We've already said it's malicious. Maybe I'm concerned with a particular source and a particular destination, getting very specific. I may not come up with anything. I'm just trying a few different options here. And then pause it right there, be able to query that again. And yes, I could save that query right there. I could certainly cut and paste it. I can look at it over a custom date. That is something that you saw from posture management over a greater period of time for sure. and being able to, again, as always, export that. The Open Editor will show me where this is. Yes, I can build that just in real time too. But my takeaway here is that you have that ability to build your own in real time. And yes, we do have multiple entity types. This is now documented in our documentation. So certainly take a look at that. I could have got right down to the protocol and a packet integer, which we saw in the native VPC flow log. That is the first screen that we saw. We also have that ability to graph that results. Looks a little bit like certainly Clarity to be able to look at that over a custom date. We know this from our posture management days for sure. And I actually have some new options right down there as well. And as always, I need to start that over that time period as well. And now I have something else here that I did not see before. I have a time log here, and it's quite extensive, and it's quite helpful in trying to determine how long this has been going on based on this simple query that we have spent so far. There are some statistics here, but I urge you to work through the dashboard, that main dashboard that we log into initially. That is helpful. You can basically build, again, a custom dashboard and share it with others relative to threat intelligence, simply called intelligence within our menu system. So we've looked at some cloud network traffic. This, again, is being filtered based on policy and rule sets and notifications, which we'll take a look at, and being deposited in the threat and security event piece that we saw. It's just as an initial observation. Now, cloud activities, as you may guess, will be part of the CloudTrail ingestion, the CloudTrail logs that we need to take a closer look at and be able to use the same GSL query steps and drill down that in as well. Look at it from that simple GSL query. Look at it from a particular time period as well as that account. We're using this live demo account. Lots of other people are using it as well at the same time. So we get some interesting results for sure. But like the cloud network traffic, we have these standard queries that may be interesting to you that we have spent some time creating, as well as any custom query that might be interesting. As you can see here, it is extensive. You can create those queries simply in real time, share those with others for sure. Or again, look at, I already hit the start button, let that give us hopefully no meaningful information. But again, the demo account will be interesting. And of course, we've got something in here called test. That's a good query. That's a good test times 2. But those custom queries are certainly helpful, as well as things that you may be familiar looking at those CloudTrail logs and events as something that you want to know about, that you want to look at over a period of time, and as always, be able to be able to explore those in a variety of different ways. So you have lots of options to create those logs, specifically the analysis of those CloudTrail events in both the network activity, VPC flow logs, and the CloudTrail events. So I am repainting those options right here and being able to allow you to create those very quickly and be able to export that, look at it from a particular time period as well. So that is traffic and cloud activities, a very quick look here. We could query against some other things, but I want to keep it moving. You'll be able to very quickly generate some interesting things, export them, share them with those results, those CSV files with others to be able to further analyze or just have a good clean record of those traffic VPC flow logs and those CloudTrail logs and events. Yes, you can graph them in CloudTrail events as well with that time frame here. It gets a little busy here, so you may want to look at this. But again, if you've spent any time in the posture management side, this should look, the format should look familiar to you. A little hard to read in this recorded video, but certainly take a look at that. That's going to be helpful. The statistics associated with these events can be made part of that dashboard as well. Once you have it working to your satisfaction, that is that particular rule set. So we have looked at the dashboard specific to intelligence. We looked at the events that were generated from policies, rule sets, and notifications, looked at those activity and those traffic logs in a clarity-like way, as well as using cloud checkpoints, CloudGuard, Threat Cloud analysis tools to show you more details about the validity of that traffic. But now let's take a quick look at those policies, those rule sets, those notification process, things again that you are familiar with if you spent any time in the posture management section. A quick look there shows rule sets. It talks about continuous posture. It talks about the assessment history as well as the GSL builder. Well, let's look at what the intelligence has as I change the format into something that is a bit more legible for the recorded video. We see we have a set of standard rule sets that can be applied to this traffic that is being pulled in, being ingested by CloudGuard native for you to review and analyze. And as we drill down on a sample one, we see the clone theme isn't here, but you could add a specific policy. Some of these are embedded rule sets, but as we scroll down here, we see that GSL-like language being applied to CloudTrail events. We should be able to filter this as well as we have relative to the source, the entity type I see here is helpful as well. I'm not going to make any changes here, but we do have that ability to do all of that. We saw a CloudTrail sample GSL. We'll look at VPC flow logs as well. You may have seen something about malicious, but we do have other GSL options, details, adjectives that give you that information. And yes, it goes on for multiple pages, as well as I mentioned, that MITRE ATT&CK framework. That is something that the MITRE Corporation has developed, and we have incorporated that into our CloudGuard native threat monitoring set. And the search button has moved to a more logical place. So if I just type, we should be able to see those things in the top level rule set. And it always defaults to that grid view. But we see all things MITRE related. And this, again, is worth mentioning because it shows and labels. If you go over to the MITRE website, you will see this same framework definitions as you see here, and we'll apply that same process. So these are things that you can apply after the fact, after you add that initial policy for VPC flow logs and CloudTrail logs and events, and you see the logic that is involved here, and you make a decision. Well, I need to create something from scratch, or use something that already exists. Use that notification, and I call your attention to what you used in posture management. The same process is here. The results should be these policies that can be filtered on environments as well as rule sets. And again, you can, as you just saw, you can add that policy as well. And it very quickly shows you that notification option. This is a building block that you can make from scratch or use an existing one. And as we remember from our notifications, we'll take a quick look at that notification process. Again, this main intelligence menu always gives you that quick shortcut to go there if you don't remember that it's now under settings, and be able to add that notification, something that should be a little bit familiar with you. Again, relative to the name, moving that to the events/alerts console, as well as emailing the results to individuals. And you can see we have this better labeled under association, specifically logic. You see that where it's being used. It all came from this, what I believe to be a more logical process of looking at these threat intelligence enriched log files, whether they be from VPC flow logs or CloudTrail logs, is all listed here. So that puts us back up at the dashboard. Hopefully now you've begun to see how these VPC flow logs and these CloudTrail logs are onboarded, how they are pulled in, ingested with that threat intelligence data from Checkpoint. And now you have that quick shortcut through these dashboard settings that allow you to drill down into those policy and event results. Yep, they're here. And go right to that event console, or specifically to the intelligence console. I created this quick filter right here. And as always, I want to urge you to create a filter or two relative to intelligence. And now you have this all built in to something that can be very quickly sorted now with respect to intelligence. This is something specific to the events console that covers all of our product now, that allows you to sort very quickly, customize these columns, and as always, export what you have created here as all the findings or what your filter events are. So that is a quick look with a bit more focus in on how you onboard and review threat intelligence, VPC flow logs, and CloudTrail events. Thank you.